We spend a lot of time focusing on the positive, and that is to be free to give, serve, and enjoy life. And we're going to do that in the next episode, but this one's freedom from. So today I want to focus on freedom from fear, frustration, and fuss, and what causes people to experience that once they reach the mountain peak of retirement.
Hello, and welcome to Simplify Your Retirement Podcast with Stephen Strickland. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Paul.
Excited to be back in here today as we're closing in on the end of Season 5.
Amazing.
5, yeah. So the season's been great. We've been talking a lot about the planning process and all of that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I was thinking about, in relation to planning, there's that old saying that people talk about how a lot of people spend more time planning for vacation than they do for retirement.
Right. A lot of people spend a lot of time, effort, and energy doing all the research, looking for the hotels and the cars and the venues and the restaurants and the activities and all the kind of stuff. A lot goes into it. If you want to have a great vacation, you certainly can't just wing it.
Yeah,
You know, some people don't mind doing that. Every once in a while, it's not bad, you know what I mean, just to go and say, hey, we have no plans, we're just going to get there, but certainly don't want to plan retirement like that. And if you really think about it, if you think about the number of hours, the number of meetings someone might have planning for 30 to 35 years in retirement, it's not a lot of time. And so that's why it's very important to take this seriously, take the meeting seriously, get everything out on the table that you really want to do in retirement to make sure it is what you want it to be.
It made me think of another quote I read this week, very similar, but yet I think it encapsulates what we're talking about this season too, and that was from Zig Ziglar. And he said, a lot of people spend more time planning their wedding than they do their marriage.
Yeah.
And so, the idea that we're planning to get there. And so we've talked about this where there are the people who don't plan for retirement. They kind of bury their head in the sand. They would rather live in this world of, let me plan something where I can escape reality, in a sense, right? A vacation, just get away from life. And they kind of avoid handling the bigger subjects like retirement. And then there's the people who do plan for retirement, and there are a lot of retirement income planners and all that. They spend a lot of time planning for that. But there's another element of it, and that is, like you said, 30 to 35 years in retirement. And so we've talked about it before, where some people might spend 30 to 35 years working and then 30 to 35 years in retirement. And so it needs to be addressed where people plan for both getting to, but also through retirement.
And I think that's the key. You know, there's a lot of financial advisors out there that do focus on that event, getting people prepared for the day they can retire. And certainly we do that. But that's kind of like expected. Everyone who's doing financial advice, everyone who's a retirement planner should be able to get people to the place where they can retire. So that's kind of like getting to the vacation, getting to the wedding day in the analogy that you said. But what our focus is after that. It's after the wedding day for the years of marriage. It's after you get to the vacation, you're there. Now, what are you going to do? And so a lot of people, they get to this milestone, they have the ability, they have the finances, they have the net worth, they have the investment size, they have the nest egg to be able to supposedly quit working. But now all of a sudden, if you haven't planned for those 30 years, those 35 years, you plan for 30 to 35 years to get to that day. And it's a great day. But that's not the end goal. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they're focused on the goal of retirement, the day that they can walk out of the job and not have to work anymore, no more 40-hour work weeks, no more 52 weeks of the year, asking for days off, fighting traffic, all that kind of stuff. That's a great day. In our firm, we call it making work optional. We want to get every person that we work with to that day as soon as possible. If the motivation is for them to be free to give, serve, and enjoy life, we want them to do this as soon as possible. But we all know here, the focus here at our firm, the focus of this podcast, the focus of everything we do is not getting people to that one day. And that one day is everything. You made it. You're able to walk out of the job. You have the money you need to retire. You have the income you need. But what is the plan? What is the plan for after that day? And that's a big deal. We know this now for working for many years with people in retirement. It's not just getting them to, it is getting them through. And there's a lot of things that can happen after you get there that can really make a big difference. And that's what we want to help people do, because it's always been called the American dream. The American dream, to be able to retire. This is kind of like an American concept, to be able to retire and just enjoy life, and not work anymore, and those kinds of things. And so, we want to be able to make sure people are thinking clearly through what happens next.
When we look at it, when we look at that planning, we're trying to address some risks and things that people face. And so if you're wondering what those risks are, go back and watch the beginning of the season, this whole season, because at this point we've talked about it, where the plan, really, we've broken it down into 6 big parts that lead to a 7th overarching part. And so the 6 parts are liquidity, income, growth, we have insurance, and we have taxes, and we have legacy. And so these are all pieces, and we've talked about it before, almost like a wheel. And where you don't know what's going to hit you to be able to address it. And so we do talk about those. So go back and watch those. But really that leads to the overarching area, which is freedom.
That's right. Yeah, we've kind of, talked about, making sure everyone has a retirement freedom plan. That's the focus. That's the terminology we're using now. So in other words, the goal is not just retirement, it's retirement freedom. And what we're going to talk about today is the freedom plan. Freedom to do certain things, freedom from certain things. That's real freedom. So the only way to have retirement freedom is to make sure you have all the pieces of this wheel that you described, 6 areas. We know it starts with the income plan. That's where we start with everybody, liquidity, income, and growth. You got to have that first. Then legacy, insurance, and tax. Once you have all 6 of these areas in place, that wheel can turn either way. We don't know what you need at any point in time, but no matter what, you're going to have something in place to protect you in each one of those 6 areas. And the reason we do that is because if you're not protected in one of those 6 areas, that's the area that you may fail in retirement on the path from retirement to freedom. And I always look at it like basically as 2 mountain peaks. Sometimes you don't see the second mountain peak until you get to the first one. You see the first one, and that is retirement. I want to get to retirement. So you get there, and all of a sudden you realize you're either going to go down after that, you're going to get depressed, you're going to go into a pit of despair, and all these things might happen to you later that you weren't expecting, or you can see the other mountain in the future, that mountain peak there, and there's a straight line to get across. And the straight line to get across is what we call the retirement freedom plan. And the way to stay on that path to the other mountain peak is you have this wheel undergirding, this thing staying underneath you the whole time, protecting you from falling in this big valley that a lot of people struggle with in retirement, between retirement and freedom. And it's not the same thing.
You said something very important there that I want to go back to that people may not understand, and that's freedom. And you mentioned that there's 2 ways that people get freedom. And so, I think about even the beginning of this country, right? And we see that in there. There's freedom from. And so, part of the reason for the independence was freedom from tyranny, freedom from oppression, right? But then there's also the freedom too, and so the pursuit of happiness.
That's right.
And so we look at it, it's both. Yeah. It's not either or, it's both and so we want to address those. But today we're going to talk about freedom from. And I know you have a great story that you've told before, but people listening to the podcast, watching us here, may not have ever heard this, but it kind of goes back to that idea of planning for a vacation. Tell us a story, and how does that play into freedom? Yeah,
so the whole idea is it's not just about getting to the place that you're going to retire, it's getting to a place where you're able to enjoy it and have the freedom to be able to not be afraid and all these kinds of things. And so just this past summer, My wife and I were able to take a 25th anniversary trip that we had tried to do when COVID hit us a few years ago. We were finally able to do it just this past summer. We took our kids with us on this trip. We were in an area, it was outside of the country. We were in this coastal village, and this coastal village was an area where there was 5 villages you could see from any point. Any one of these 5 villages, you could see the other 5. It was kind of like a cove, beautiful area on the coast. We were on the southernmost village. From the place we were staying, we could look up and see the other 4. And especially at nighttime, all of them were lit. And so this was an area that we were told that, hey, you know what? There are some people that hike all 5 villages in a single day. And in other words, these villages were all within hiking distance of each other, or walking distance, as it were. And so after spending a few days in the one we were currently in, I decided it'd be a great idea. Let's, we've already been here. We've seen the kind of the things that to do here. Let's go to the next village up. I could see it, clearly from where we were staying. It was, around the corner up there. And so one night I said, let's, instead of eating dinner here, let's eat dinner at the next stop up. And so I took off. There was trails there, a lot of tourists there, a lot of people walking around. And so we were taking our time. We're going to go eat dinner. My kids we're dressed to go out for a nice dinner, like you would on vacation. My sons are in collared shirts. My wife and daughter, they're kind of in sundresses and heels and so forth. We're taking our time. We're walking. We're taking pictures. We knew it was not a big deal. In fact, I did check out one thing. Yeah. I checked out the distance, and the distance was only about a mile, a little less than a mile and a half.
That's not
so
bad.
I knew even walking, this is like a 45-minute trip.
Yeah.
Yep. Left at 4 o'clock. We're going to get there in time for dinner. Long story short, as we took off to get off, we went through the town and got on this trail, a trail that I assumed would be clearly marked. And what we found out was there was not a lot of signs once we got on the trail, once we left this village to get to the next one, number one. Number two, I also discovered very quickly that this was not going to be like a walk along the seashore. This was up hills, down hills. It was mountainous. This was not a hike, Paul. This was this is not a trail. This was climbing. Wow. Okay, we're talking about rocks. We're talking about when we were lost, we were sweating. Our kids are carrying their shoes. It's like this was unexpected. And there was a few times on that trip that I realized I don't know where I'm at. This was not clearly marked. I didn't know if we were going the right direction or not. I couldn't see the village that I thought I was going to be able to always have in view the whole time. And so as we're going on this trip, I started to get afraid. It was starting to get later and later and later. It was like a little more than an hour into this trip. And I'm starting to think, are we going to make it to the next one before it gets dark? And so we started to experience some fear. It's going to get dark. And then certainly there was some, frustration. A lot of times when there's fear, it leads to frustration. My kids and wife are asking me things like, did you ever ask for directions? Like, why would I ask for directions? I know exactly where it's at. Everyone says you can do this. And so no need for directions. I never asked for a map. I never, thought it was going to be clearly marked. So there's fear, there's frustration. Are we there yet? And then a lot of times, if you ever traveled with kids, if you ever traveled with kids before and you have fear and you have frustration, it leads to something else. Fussing. Okay. So where I'm experiencing all these things: fear, frustration, fussing, and I'm starting to get concerned. But believe it or not, the fact that I'm sitting here today in this podcast studio with you, Paul, means that we made it there. Yes. And I'm telling you, we made it there. It took us about 2 hours.
Wow.
To get there, and I could not believe it when we finally came around one cliff or whatever. We could see it down below. We knew we were going to make it, and so we started climbing down, and so we made it there just before dark. And so it was an amazing thing. So I kind of relate this to like retirement planning, retirement to freedom, like we're talking about today. What happens is we got to the destination we wanted to go. We were at this beautiful place. We stayed there for a few days, but that was not it. There was other things to do once we got there. Yeah. But to get to the other place, we experienced a lot of fear. We experienced a lot of frustration. We experienced a lot of fuss. And for people in retirement, a lot of times I see that happening. They get to retirement, but now all of a sudden, now that they're there are things that happen that lead to these things. Mm-hmm. And what we want to do for people is help them during their retirement years to eliminate some of the things that causes people to be afraid. That eliminates a lot of things that cause people to be frustrated. And certainly the last thing we want is for people to spend their years fussing at each other all throughout the retirement years. And so what we like to think through, we think through in terms of retirement freedom from. Mm-hmm. certainly the goal, we spend a lot of time focusing on the positive, and that is to be free to give, serve, and enjoy life. And we're going to do that in the next episode. But this one's freedom from. So today I want to focus on freedom from fear, frustration, and fuss, and what causes people to experience that once they reach the mountain peak of retirement.
Yeah, and when you're telling that story, every time I hear it, it's funny because it's something I would do too. It's something I would do too, right? Not planning it out, but I mean, that's a lot of it is just you knew people who'd done it.
That's right.
You heard the stories.
That's right.
It's been done. I mean, and the fact that people are there to tell stories just like you are means it's possible to survive this.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean you don't go through the hard times in the meantime. But there was a way to avoid it.
Absolutely.
And that's the difference. And so, it's exciting to be able to think about doing that, but it makes me think of the principle that one of the principles of financial planning that we hold to, which is financial peace comes from having a plan. And that's right. Really what we're talking about.
Absolutely right. And so, when it comes to people getting into retirement, a lot of times, Paul, we'll do a seminar, we'll do a workshop, we'll ask people in the room, so what would cause someone after they retire to experience fear? What would cause somebody after they've retired, they hit this milestone, what would cause someone to be frustrated at that point in time? And the answers are pretty much always the same. And it's really the risk that we want to address before someone retires, and that is outliving my assets. The fear of running out of money in retirement. Yeah. That's a big one. A lot of times it's healthcare. Not only are we going to be healthy, but also what are the costs associated with that? It is, some people talk about inflation. Some people talk about taxes. So there's all these things that would cause someone to not be able to do what the dream is. And the dream was to enjoy life with family and friends. The dream was to have a time of relaxation and enjoying life after retirement, not being frustrated and fearful anymore. And so we want to make sure we talk about these things. And it's really what you just said, and that is having a plan. The nature of all risks are that we don't know if they're going to happen or not. And so what some people do when they say, well, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, they do nothing about it. So what we say is, no, since it's a risk, since it's a possibility, since we don't know if it's going to happen to you or not, it doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it. We should just say, here's what we would do if that happens. That's what a plan means, because then what happens is when I'm on this retirement freedom path, I'm getting to the next place. I know, for example, long-term care. We talk about long-term care. So someone could go through retirement and not buy long-term care insurance, not buy life insurance to cover long-term care, never deal with it, and spend for 30 years in retirement worried about it, being afraid. What happens if one of them needs that sort of care? What are we going to do to pay for this? Being frustrated that the other person didn't deal with it. That's just one example. So we say to everybody, we don't know if you're going to have a long-term care stay. We don't know if you're going to have a long-term care need. Here's what we're going to do as planners, though. We're going to put a plan in place that says, here's what we're going to do to cover it. So whether it ever happens or not, it doesn't matter. We know we've got a plan to deal with it. What does that lead people to do? It leads people to be free. I'm free from the fear of a long-term care stay. So all these areas of planning, you think about legacy planning, when you think about your loved ones, the money, we talked about this in our last episode, the things that we're going to leave behind. If I already know as I start retirement that the money is going to get to where I want it to go, the way I want it to get there, the message is left behind, that's one thing that's not going to derail my retirement freedom. I know that's dealt with. If either one of us become incapacitated and we know we have the powers of attorney set up, that's a fear I've eliminated. Do we know if that's going to be an issue? No. No one knows if that's going to be an issue or not, but you deal with it, you plan for it, and it just keeps you on this path. So when we talk about having freedom in retirement, we're talking about freedom from a lot of these risks. And the way we deal with all of these risks and concerns and challenges is a plan. Everything we've talked about this season, all 6 areas keep people on the path of freedom. And I know sometimes you and we talk about these things a lot, and we talk about it on the podcast, we talk about it every day. And so sometimes I take it for granted that people have heard this. And so I want to say this again. That's why it's so important to us that every one of our clients has a plan to cover all 6 areas. And we know that traditional financial advice doesn't cover all 6 areas. They may just get you to a nest egg number that gives you some probability of success in retirement. It's way more than that. It is making sure you have your insurance in place, life insurance, if you want to cover, death benefit for your children, any of those kinds of things. It is making sure you have one of the other principles we teach on: protect the income, grow the rest. The last thing someone wants to do in retirement is spend 30 years worried about what the stock market is doing, worried whether or not something that we cannot control is going to control us, worried about the stock market giving us the freedom in retirement to enjoy it. Well, no. Let's deal with your income need in retirement. Let's protect it so there's nothing that can take away that joy, that freedom from doing what you want to do in retirement. So all these areas: growth, making sure that the money you have at risk in the stock market is following the 5-year rule. Only take diversified risk with money you don't need for at least 5 years. And so knowing that I can go on vacation in retirement, I can go travel in retirement, I can be on the golf course, I can be on the boat, I can be with my grandkids. And what I don't have to worry about is my next paycheck coming in or my next income check coming in next month. What I don't have to worry about is whether or not the stock market went down today or not. That's what we're talking about. All these 6 areas, once you have them, that eliminates a lot of the reasons why people have fear, frustration, and fuss, and we've eliminated it. Now you can stay on this path of being free. And really, I'm excited about going to the next one. I keep wanting to get there to the next podcast, the freedom to give, serve, and enjoy life. But we want to make sure we take care of all the things you should be free from.
And it doesn't mean that things won't happen.
Yeah.
Right. So even if you had started out on that path to dinner and you had a plan.
Yeah.
So you looked at a map, you had talked to a guide, you had someone who's been there before and tells you all these things that you have to be aware of. You have to be aware of these steep hills. You have to be aware of these curves, of these turns.
You might want to wear these shoes. You might want to play in 2 hours. You might want to bring a bottle of water.
And you wouldn't have had the fear that goes with it, but it doesn't mean that you wouldn't have had a climb.
That's right.
But you would have known to expect it and be able to address it.
That's what I was going to say. The expectations would have been there. That helps.
Yes.
Here's what you can expect. We would have experienced the same, hills and climbs and turns and those kind of stuff, but we would have been prepared because someone would have told us, here's what to expect. And so therefore, the trip there would have been better knowing, hey, guess what? This is going to take 2 hours. Guess what? You should probably wear different shoes. Number 3, you might want to bring some water, all those kinds of things because someone's done it.
Yes.
And so that's what wise wealth brings to the table for people as they prepare for retirement. That's what sets us apart. We really do believe this. We're an education-based financial planning firm, but we believe what sets us apart is that we're not trying to get people to a moment in time, to a day in your life that you leave work. That's not it. You spend a lot of time preparing for that day, but it's getting through that day, the next 30 years. That's what matters. And that's why we put the plans in place that we do. And we have the experience to tell people, look, not only, we're helping people on this side of retirement, we have a lot of people on the other side now. This is 17-year Wise Wealth has been around for 17 years. So we've helped a lot of people get to that moment, but now we've helped a lot of people get through it. And we know what it takes to stay on the path. It doesn't mean surprises don't come, but it means we're prepared for pretty much, anything that could make someone fall off that path. What happens if taxes go up by 20% in retirement? What if my Social Security goes down? All these questions that need to be addressed to give people peace of mind. Well, what we want people to have in retirement is confidence. You can retire. You can do the things that you want to do in retirement. We've eliminated all the contingencies, all the risks that might or might not happen. You're prepared for those things.
Yeah, and that's where having someone who understands that helps. If you try to just do it on your own, it may or may not work, but you're probably still going to have the fear and the frustration and the fussing that comes along the way.
And that's what we tell everybody, even listen to this podcast today. One of the main reasons to even talk about this is because, I just call it generic financial advice. And by the way, you're not going to get this from a robo-advisor. I just have to say this. Every once in a while, it comes to my mind. It's like robo-advice. You're not going to get this from AI. You're not going to get this from a robo-advisor. They have a brain, but they do not have a heart. And so they may be able to tell you a number, You might get some online robot who can save you some fee and tell you how much money you need to be able to retire. By the way, everyone's 401k these days, everyone's 401k statement now also, it seems to include some estimate that you're on track or not. What I would not do is trust a 401k provider statement that says whether you're not on track or not. I'm just going to throw that out there too. Sorry, Paul, all these things are coming to my mind right now. So don't ever trust that either. So they may get you there. The robot might get you there, the online. And what you really need is a person that has a brain and a heart, and someone who can say, and some experience, and say, look, here's not what it takes to get to there. It's to get through there. And I know a lot of people who think, well, I really don't need financial planners. I don't need financial advice. I can do this all on my own. I think there's like me leaving on that trip. I don't need to ask anybody. I can see it. It seems pretty obvious to me that we're going to be able to get there. Other people have done it. I'm not less smart than them. I'm not less shaped than any of them and those kinds of things. I know we can do it. And so that's what people think going to retirement. I think the guy at work, he left and did it on his own. My brother or my uncle or somebody else did it on their own. They never got advice, and somehow they made it. And so one of the key things we teach everybody here is that, you don't ever make your retirement decisions based on the experience of someone else. Someone else could have told me that day, I went over there. It took me 30 minutes to hike over there. Well, they may have been there before. They may have had a map. They may have done, so that doesn't mean it's going to be my experience. So you always base your retirement decisions and working with a planner and all those kinds of things based on current needs, the experience that you're going to have in retirement that may be different than someone else's.
The plan is really important because a lot of times what happens is when you're in that moment of fear or frustration and there's all this fussing going on and it's easy to settle or to give up.
That's right.
And so that's not what we want for anyone. In fact, we believe you deserve to have the retirement that you've been planning for.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to plan ahead than to have, something go wrong 10 years in retirement. Now all of a sudden, you're more fatigued. You go back to the example of our hike. We're more tired, we're more drained, we're more thirsty, So now to have to come out of that and get back on a level footing to make it the rest of the way is more of a challenge. It can be done, but the best time to plan is now. We always say you're never closer to that path, the retirement freedom path, than you are today, especially when you're retired. So stay on there. And so, I do want to finish the story. Because I know a lot of people are left wondering, hanging. So I'm not going to do that to you. If you've stayed with us on this podcast today, you may be wondering yourself, how in the world did you guys get back? How did you get back from going out to dinner in the other village that night back to the other back to your home? Was
it like Hansel and Gretel and leaving breadcrumbs along the way?
Exactly. So thankfully, first thing I did, I learned my lesson, Paul. First thing I did when I got there, I found someone who was a local, and I said, hey, we just came over from this other place. Is there a different way? Is there a better way to get back than the way that I came? Because if I have to go back that way, I don't think I'm going to make it one way or another. Probably not going to make it. And so, but what we found out is that there is literally a train. There is a train shuttle service that goes from one village to the other, all 5 villages, every half hour to like 11 p.m. And so what that did for me was it certainly saved me from a lot of trouble, hassle, fuss, and the rest of the night and so forth. But what it allowed me to do is for us to get there, wash our hands, get cleaned up a little bit, find a place to eat dinner and enjoy it. Not have to wonder now, what are we going to do about getting back? How much time do we have here? Can we sit down and enjoy this dinner? Or do we have to figure out, it eliminated all that. So I was able to find a place we wanted to go eat, took our time eating there, knew we could find the shuttle to get on the train to get back. So, but what did it take? It took asking somebody a question. It took saying, this was not the right way to do it. You know what I mean? I need help getting back. It took finding a local person. It took finding, a guide who knew what to do, someone who had been there before. It took getting advice from someone who knew the path, who knew what it's going to take to be able to get back safely and easily. And so that's what we tell people about planning for retirement. Talk to a guide. Talk to someone who knows what to look out for. Is there an easier path? Is there a better way? And all that kind of stuff. And that's really what we do when it comes to retirement planning, the retirement freedom plan. That's what we're talking about. talking to someone with experience, talking to someone with a guide who can help people avoid fear. That's what I feel like what we're doing. What the freedom plan is all about. Eliminating the freedom from is eliminating the fear of being in retirement, the frustration that some people experience in retirement. And the reason I shake my head like that is because I feel bad for the people who are 75 and 80 years old experience frustration when you could have had a plan. You shouldn't be living in fear and frustration and having it fussing. I don't know if you've ever seen people in their 70s and 80s fussing at each other. You know, we want to avoid that, especially when it comes to the money things. And so that's what we're trying to do here. Give people freedom from the fear, frustration, fussing, and keep on a path that leads to confidence throughout retirement. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and it starts with having that plan and covering those 6 areas, which leads to freedom. And so, again, today we've been talking about freedom, the freedom aspect of the retirement freedom plan, and specifically freedom from, what it provides freedom from. And, you know, I love the story that you shared today with our audience, and, you know, I can identify with it, and I know many of these people watching today will be able to identify with that and understand that, because there is this element of knowing that you could enjoy dinner, take your time and enjoy it.
Yes.
You probably missed a lot of beauty along the way.
Right. Yes,
because you didn't know.
Yeah, we couldn't stop and look. We were in a hurry. We didn't know how long it was going to take and all those things. That's right. We want people to enjoy the journey and not just the destination, be able to take your time and really enjoy life. And it's hard to do when you're still worried about, you know, taxes and insurance. We deal with those things so you can go ahead and be on the path.
Yeah. And so looking forward, I know you're looking forward to as much as anyone else looking forward to next time when we talk about freedom too. And so we are going to talk about that in our next episode. But today, again, thank you for sharing this story. I know some people don't like to admit when maybe they should have asked for directions, but
thank you. You're looking at me. I think there are people that I know who would agree with you.
Thank you for being open and honest with that and sharing that story, because it is. I mean, that's why we do what we do. Right. And so for you, our listening audience, and those watching today, if you're living in fear right now, you have fear, you have frustrations, you have a lot of unknowns. There is a way to address it. There is a way to put together a plan, and it simply starts with a conversation, a simple clarity conversation. Let's see, where do you want to go, and let's talk about the best way to get there and the best equipment, the best tools, all of that. The plan, though, is what determines all of that. And so let's put together a retirement freedom plan for you, and it starts with a simple clarity conversation. Give us a call, 816-246-WISE, or email us at info@wisewealth.com, and let's start that conversation to put you on the path to have freedom from fear, frustration, and fussing. Thank you, Stephen, for all that you do for the education. Thank you to you again, our listening and viewing audience. You're the reason we do this. You're the reason that we're here. This is not just a job for us. It's a calling. And we want everyone to have the freedom that comes from having a plan. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe so that when the next episode comes out, you'll be alerted. Makes it a whole lot easier to find. It also makes it easy to share. You probably know someone who could use this episode as well. Share it with them. Help them be able to understand there is a way to have freedom from fear, frustration, and fussing. Thank you for watching today. From all of us here at Wise Wealth, again, this is Paul reminding you that financial peace comes from having a plan. And we'll see you next time.